Welcome to the We Win Injury Law podcast. I'm Tyler Todd, your host, sitting here with my co-host Jaron, the Snow Canyon Man Sandberg. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is the first podcast of the new year that we're doing.
Yeah. Or at least that we're recording, and we're starting off bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Happy New Year, everybody. 2026. Hopefully, like, all your resolutions are still going strong. We're not very far into it, but hopefully they're still going. The gyms have been busier than ever, of course, and I expect that to taper off here shortly.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
We hope it doesn't taper off, but it will.
I don't like the extra crowds, and let's be honest.
But you're hoping people stick to their New Year's resolutions as long as possible.
Well, sure. Not me.
Not the gym one, the other ones.
Yeah, not the gym ones. But all your other ones, we hope so. This is an interesting podcast because this is happening right now in the city of Utah. And we're talking about when first responders can be sued. There's a huge liability debate about, like, EMTs, firefighters, paramedics, police officers. Can they be sued responding to 911 calls? And hopefully in 2026, that never is part of your life or the situation you find yourself in, but many of you will, whether it be a witness to an accident, in an accident, a victim of an accident, who knows?
Yeah.
But everyone has called either 911 or knows someone who's called 911 or something. So hopefully this is like an issue that's not far from everyone's, hopefully, perspective.
Yeah.
But when let's backtrack a little bit. When you see an accident, and every now and then I'm like, you see something, like, you're driving, you see a car like lose control, or you see something happen, and you're like, oh man, am I gonna have to stop and help somebody?
Yeah.
And hopefully you will want to do that, right?
Yeah.
There's been a couple of times where I'm like, I don't have time to stop right now to help somebody.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds horrible.
Well, and some of it's, what would you have done beyond, hey, are you okay? I'm not going to probably do mouth to mouth. I don't know if I'm competent enough to, like, do chest compressions the right way. Maybe with 911 on the line. So yeah, I always think sometimes, like, what aid am I going to render? Or am I just going to embarrass this person at the scene of an accident?
Yeah, but I think most people do. Like, your instincts kick in and you just help. And I think that's a good thing, is when that's known as Good Samaritans, right?
Yeah.
We had an experience actually in Florida where we were on the beach, and beautiful day, very, very crowded on the beach in the water. And then it was like the first time I had turned my back to the ocean, because we were starting to do like a little sandcastle building. And
do you get very elaborate on the sandcastle? Do you guys go all out?
Well, it was a sandcastle competition.
Okay, yeah.
So that was the intent. Yeah, we were like digging in to get, like, let's do this.
Go big.
Let's win this.
Yeah. Okay.
And as soon as I turned my back, and I was not very far from the water, because you need water to help build your sandcastle.
Gotta be a nice little mix of both. Can't be too dry.
Can't be too dry. Nope. And I turned my back to the ocean, and I swear within seconds of turning my back to the ocean, I hear someone yelling "shark," and then a lot of people yelling "shark, shark."
Are your kids in the water at this point? Or are they building
No.
sandcastles with you?
Yeah, no one's in the water, which thankfully, because that would have really freaked me out.
Yeah.
But we turn around, and we're like, what's happening out there? And we're looking out to see people are starting to come in really quickly from the water to the sand, to the beach. And I look to my son, I'm like, we got to go out and help. You stay here. And my brother-in-law had also noticed, so he started, like, walking out. We just went. And I hate sharks.
We've watched a few YouTube videos in the office, or I don't even know if it was on YouTube, of sharks, and because you've surfed a lot, you've been out in the water a lot, lived in Hawaii a lot. You're a water guy, and
I hate sharks.
So I think, to, like, me that wades in waist deep, you don't get as worried about sharks. I don't panic about sharks. But I've seen you around even just shark videos, and you're like, I can't watch.
There's never been a time that I've been out in the water surfing that I haven't been thinking about sharks. And then I see things, you're like, please don't be a shark. And you're like, oh, it's a turtle.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
And then you hear shark on the beach.
We hear shark on the beach and we go. And we just take off.
So even with all of this fear,
we just take off.
You're out there.
So we're getting out into the water. My brother-in-law and I we're like you're running, then you're swimming because you're starting to get up to your waist and your chest. And right as we kind of get about chest and neck deep, we get out to where this commotion's happening. And we realize that I'm looking for blood, right?
Yeah.
And there's no blood in the water. And I realize it's not blood or a shark. I see a woman up on a paddleboard pulling this little body up onto the paddleboard, and there's a man in the water pushing this little body up onto the paddleboard. What looks like a little boy who had been drowning. So they get this little boy up on the paddleboard and they start doing compressions. And we're holding the paddleboard so that the paddleboard can be still.
Now you to where you can touch the bottom of the ocean.
Kind of, we can
barely
touch.
Barely touch. So you're just stabilizing.
Almost swimming a little bit, and then the lifeguard gets out there right as we did too. And then we were like, we got to get this in because we can't do compressions on a paddle. They can't do compressions on a paddleboard. You push down on its chest and
the thing's bouncing.
And it's just bouncing. So my brother-in-law, myself, the lifeguard, and then one other girl got out there too, and she was up on the paddleboard with this other woman. And we pull the paddleboard into the beach with this little boy on the paddleboard. And we pull him right in front of where we were. So then we started breaking down our tent, throwing the chairs over to the side so that the ambulance or the truck.
You're assuming something's coming.
EMS is coming, right? Yeah. Paramedics are coming. And we get this little boy right onto the beach, and the lifeguard keeps doing compressions. Yeah. And then they keep switching in mouth to mouth and CPR and whatnot. And the parents are right there and freaking out. And anyways, everyone's doing their best to save this little boy, right? And and in that moment, it was hectic, dramatic, crazy.
This is an emergency.
I remember the mom freaking out, and I remember thinking, "Where's the dad?" Because if I was the dad in that situation, I think I would have been freaking out, and I couldn't tell who the dad was. And I'm like, "Where's dad? Where's dad?" Anyways,
and maybe not there, maybe in shock.
He was there.
Oh, he was there.
He was just quiet and in shock. So he was there, and then the truck comes down, gets him in the back of the truck, takes him away to the hospital. And then the family, the mom and dad, because they couldn't get into the truck, were right there. And we're like, what can we do for you? And they're like, just pray with us. So we prayed with them. And that was pretty like a traumatic experience for us and my children and all the things. So it's interesting when we're talking about like this first responders, Good Samaritan, everyone's doing the best to save this little boy who did pass away later at the hospital. I can appreciate wanting to protect first responders, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what's happening here in Utah is, and that's the immunity first responders, or at least EMT, firefighters, paramedics have had, like that blanket immunity of emergency response. Do your best in the moment, try to save lives, right? That's the idea.
And an interesting angle is that we like, even in like basic negligence, you're still judging people based on what is reasonable under the circumstances. And if those circumstances are an emergency, you're going to have a different standard than, and I think we see this in maybe medical malpractice cases, that in the emergency room, there's maybe a different set of criteria that they're addressing than maybe someone that's going in for a surgical consult and has all the time to review documents and review stuff, versus in an emergency room situation, if the person's not responsive, there's a different standard on what they're doing. Even with the chest compressions, I remember a case in law school this is where law school, I think, loved these emergency situations and these Good Samaritan rules, is they were easy test questions, right?
Right.
There's a certain element of assumption of the risk when you then make that decision to jump into that emergency and render aid. Are you then putting some liability on yourself? And a lot of states enacted a lot of these Good Samaritan statutes that give some blanket immunity. Then we have government immunity in this situation, where government immunity provides even more, just shorter statute of limitations and things. I will say the one difference I want to maybe think about as we get into this case, though, is for some of these people, it's like their job. Like for you on the beach, rendering aid versus the lifeguard rendering aid.
Well, that's what I was thinking as you were saying that the number of people, so that there were the man and the woman that initially got him up on the paddleboard. Those two, my brother-in-law and myself, 4. The other girl that had come out, 5, and the lifeguard, 6. So of those 6 people, only 1 was a professional.
Yeah.
Right, or lifesaver, or
that's at least trained, presumably trained to save a life in that situation.
That's right. So there's only, out of the 6 of us, 1 professional that.
I'm picturing Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in that Baywatch movie running out to the beach with you.
You know what's funny is I cannot picture that lifeguard to save my life. Everybody else I can picture, and I can see him, but the lifeguard I don't remember.
It wasn't as impactful.
It was not The Rock.
It was not.
It could have been more like an Efron, a Zac Efron light,
yeah.
But it wasn't The Rock. Yeah. But interestingly enough, the man and the woman, I thought it was their paddleboard.
Oh.
After everything had settled down and you're just left there like, what just happened? It turns out that the man and the woman were just walking, like, hey, let's go walk down the beach.
They're doing the same thing. They weren't out there swimming.
No, they weren't. They were walking the beach. They were like, hey, let's go take a walk. They were walking along the beach, looked out and saw the little boy floating.
Oh.
So they didn't, it wasn't their paddleboard.
They just grabbed
They just grabbed the paddleboard that was sitting right there and went out to go try to like save him because it clearly was a little boy or a person floating, which I thought was pretty neat. And I told him, I'm like, if this boy survives, it's because of your efforts. Yeah. But back to the thing about professional.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about it until doing this podcast right now.
Yeah.
Did we have any like liability exposure for being out there for as long as we were doing compressions?
Yeah. And again, it goes back to that very rigid legal question of, did you stepping into that emergency situation versus if you just stay on the beach and render no aid, there's no liability, right? That was the easy question on the quiz back in law school.
Right, we're just bystanders and watching.
Bystanders, you have no duty to act versus the lifeguard actually does have a duty to act. And then again, is what the lifeguard did reasonable under the circumstances is normally the analysis. But like in Utah, at least the way the legislature, I think, thought they had crafted the law was that it gave blanket immunity to any first responder, regardless of whether that's their job. And the case that we're dealing with today, and let me see if I have the header just because I can't remember the exact header of the case. Let me see here. I know we had it in here.
What you're looking?
Armenta v. United Fire Authority. What I like about this analysis is it's not quite like your situation where it's this like emergency situation, life or death is a matter of seconds. Because I think sometimes there is, right? I mean, you get the emergency room see this all the time where seconds matter. This is a situation where someone is called an ambulance. They come by and complaining of, I think, chest issues. And instead of doing what they should have done, they just say, you're having a panic attack. You're fine.
Right.
Then a week later has this massive heart attack that drastically changes things. And I think most people know that you catch a heart attack early versus you wait till it's full-blown heart attack. It really changes things. And so in this situation, this is EMT's job, right, to go out to 911 calls. Presumably, if they'd have just said, yeah, let's take it to the hospital, at least rule things out, make sure everything's okay, hospital probably catches this heart attack that a week later then really is a bad heart attack and does permanent damage. But the initial district court ruling is blanket immunity, right? First responders responding to an emergency situation. Supreme Court then reverses and has this different take, which is, well, not all emergencies are. This isn't like the drowning situation where seconds matter. This was a situation where had they just done at least presumably what was reasonable, I guess what the lawsuit was about was it didn't get to a jury to decide whether that was reasonable or not, or a judge, but the judge had taken it away. This is instead, hey, this is kind of part of their job. And I think in the same vein, like, I think we have carve-outs within the law to not give blanket immunity to still provide for emergency situations, right? And so errors made maybe on the paddleboard or in that situation, very different than, hey, we're just at someone's house checking them out, they complaining of what similar symptoms of a panic attack versus a heart attack.
Right.
A little different on.
Well, yeah, and to be fair to this lifeguard, I don't think we were out there very long.
No,
I think we were trying to get him into the beach as soon as possible.
No.
We weren't,
Whether that would have made any difference,
Right.
I just use that as the.
No,
just
I agree with
because
you.
of
That's what I'm
and-
just thinking. Like, it might. I haven't really thought about this until doing this podcast. Yeah, but I tend to agree. To be honest, I tend to agree with the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
There's got to be blanket immunity doesn't really serve anybody.
No.
Now, does it serve like the those that don't have a duty and get called into action because what are they going to do? Wait for EMS to arrive?
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the ICE shooting recently, but I saw videos of a doctor that was on scene attempting or asking to render aid to the shooting victim and wasn't allowed to do so.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it wasn't allowed or what happened, because perspectives are always skewed via whoever's showing the video and from what angle and all the different things. My original impression was that there was a doctor trying to render aid and they wouldn't allow this doctor to render aid. Okay. I believe that there are times with first responders that if Good Samaritans don't react, because it does take EMS time to arrive, those that are trained and do have duties to act and be professionals and act in such a way that, hey, this is what our training has instructed us to do, and this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I do believe those individuals, the professionals, let's call them, have a duty.
Yeah.
And I believe they probably shouldn't have blanket immunity, because there is some reliance and expectation. Hey, when I call 911, right? And that's what's so great about our country, and I think most countries around the world have the same type of system set up. You expect the police, and you expect firefighters, and you expect them. You expect the ambulance to arrive.
Yeah.
I think there is some duty that's and some form of like, hey, there's an expectation set for the Good Samaritans.
Yeah.
That obviously there's not a duty, but thank goodness they show up.
Well, and once you step into that situation as a Good Samaritan, like if like the situations in the law school tests are always like, when they should have done chest compressions, they chopped off their leg. Is that reasonable under the circumstances? Right. And they give these extreme examples, but if I'm crafting this law, because I know the Utah legislature's up in arms about this, has become a hot topic in Utah, because we very much are back the blue. We support first responders in our state. If you're crafting this law, I'm okay with giving every first responder, every volunteer firefighter, every volunteer search and rescue person blanket personal immunity.
Sure.
All day long. That's how you get good people in these positions, is the officer, the EMT, search and rescue person, not worry about being personally liable for doing their job. I don't think that we should ever take it so far as to then say, we're just going to give blanket immunity in all circumstances. Think of an EMT driver if they're driving drunk.
Right.
Have we given them blanket immunity?
Right.
Right. And so there should definitely be exceptions to any type of general immunity on these situations. There's one of the cases that changed things in Utah a little bit was that case out, I think it was in Red Canyon or heading on its way to Bryce Canyon. We had a massive bus die, and the cap on damages for like 20 individuals was, the aggregate was like less than $1 million.
Which is crazy.
Which was crazy. And so those kind of things spark change. This one I feel like is maybe an overreaction, the opposite direction, where now they're saying, well, gosh, you're not protecting these people. But the standard has still always been, did the officer do reasonable under the circumstances?
Right.
And even in this ICE example, right, the the defense of them, if they stopped aid, was, hey, was the scene secure?
Right.
And if it was, and they still stopped them, then there's going to be some liability.
Right.
Or you would expect liability.
Well, and again, it goes back to duty, and that's something we learn in law school from the very beginning. What's the duty, the breach of the duty, the damage and causation, whatnot. I agree with you. And why this matters to everybody, because hopefully you never have to do. Hopefully you never have to respond to an accident scene or a drowning or something of that nature. It was traumatic. Hopefully you never have to be in that situation where you need to call 911 for you or your family. Yeah. But I also feel like in the event you do, you can have that expectation that they show up. Yeah. And they render the aid that they've been trained to do, and that's their job to do.
In a professional manner.
In a professional manner. So I agree with you in the sense that there should not maybe necessarily be blanket immunity for EMT, firefighters, police. That's their job. And look, it's a heavy burden. But that's the job apparently they sign up to do. So whether you ever become like an EMT or policeman or a firefighter, we've talked about this when you're young, like I want to be a policeman and I want to be a firefighter. Well, it's hard. It's hard work.
Well, you look at even the officer on like the George Floyd, right, which is an extreme example on the other side. Do you give the officer that put his knee on George Floyd blanket immunity? And I don't think so, right? I think that was unreasonable. And
that was the biggest question mark, right?
Breach of the duty. And so that's where I think that when you get legislatures, what I'll call is maybe feels like an overreaction in this situation. Going to the extreme side of, hey, we're going to protect these people, which we're already protected, right? There's very few situations where someone is going to be personally liable in these situations, but most of the time we've done government immunity cases. It's always the entity.
Right. Well, and it's important because if you do find yourself in that situation, you want to know that you can render aid without having some sort of like legal consequence for something that, like I said, of the 6 people that responded to the little boy on the paddleboard, 1 was the professional. One had been trained. And I came back home from Florida after that experience, like, okay, we all need to be trained with CPR.
Yeah, we're going to do some CPR
everyone's
training.
Doing CPR training. We're all, like, at the very least, if you have to be called into action and respond to something, you have some light training, like some training,
right? We joked about this at the office the other day, like, should we be doing a first aid?
And we should be, because you got to be ready. But I didn't, in that moment, certainly did not think of any sort of like legal liability. Yeah. Hey, how long should we be out here? Hey, did we do it right when we got him onto the beach? Hey, should we chill until EMS gets here? Yeah. Like, no, everyone was doing the best they could. And this kind of triggers another thing. I don't know. Did you see on the news recently where a woman fell to her death responding to an accident scene? She like fell over a barrier and fell and was killed. Yeah. She was responding as a Good Samaritan to an accident scene, well, and it cost her life.
These remind you, right? At least for me, it's always triggering of like these torts quizzes and torts multiple choice questions, which are then. So let's say I cause an accident, right, which I'm liable for, right? But then if some Good Samaritan hops in and then falls their death, am I then responsible for the Good Samaritan's death, right? And this happens with officers getting hit when they're already on an accident scene and someone else loses control.
You've seen all the crazy videos.
Yeah, we've seen those, and so
it begs a lot of it creates a lot of questions, and they're good questions. But hopefully, at the point of this podcast is there are some interesting legal issues going on right here in the state of Utah. Hopefully, they'll get it figured out so that there is blanket immunity for Good Samaritans, first responders, but that there has to be that the overreaction gets a little tempered to make sure that we're protecting the Good Samaritans, but also keeping the standards in place for the professionals. Because you want your professionals to do their job and to do it well. Yeah. So, anyways, interesting stuff. Thank you guys always for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe to our channel. That's super helpful. And always trying to bring you guys good content from not only the state of Utah, but cases around the country. And it's the things that we think are interesting, entertaining. And anyways, we appreciate you guys for always tuning in. Until next time.